everybody's going to exit their business at some point, whether it's, dying or whether it's just giving up.
You sold your business and then you travel the world with your family, and that's a dream for a lot of people. Let's go back to the systematizing of your business, because I feel like this is the key to building a sellable business.
I had bought a house when I was, I don't know, maybe 22, 23, something like that. And he'd always thought buying a house was really hard, but then he saw that I did it. He's like, man, Ben can do it. I can totally do it.
Are you ready to feel like it's Friday every day? I'm Mark Labriola II, and this is the Friday Habit. We interview experts to learn how to bring excitement, possibility, and sweet, sweet relief into every single day, no matter what day it is. If you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, or agency leader, get ready to grow your business, lead with purpose, and build a life you love. Welcome to the Friday Habit. You've all been waiting forever. We got Ben.
Dude, it's so good to see you. Not that I haven't seen you in all this time.
Yes, we have seen each other.
Yeah.
But you have not made a formal appearance on your podcast in a while.
Is it normal for one guest or one host to pod fade and the other to stay consistent? I feel like I think you're like the exemplar of,
Well, I practice what I preach,
Yeah,
know.
that's right. You just stick with it no matter what.
Yeah,
it's like no one else is here, but I'm just gonna keep going.
That's right. And you know what? This is our 200th episode, which is wild. And so we got some good news and some sad news with all that. One is the podcast is going to continue, but it's going to continue without Ben, sadly. And one of those things is reasons why is that he's sold his business like we've been teasing for the past year. He traveled the world, and now he's focusing on a ton of other things. And he just he'll be a consistent guest. We're gonna keep having Ben on. His spirit will live on in the Friday Habit, and he will always be a part of the show.
Yeah.
But it's really crazy to think about how long this podcast has been going. So, almost 6 years ago, we got together on a Bro Mountain getaway.
What is a Bro Mountain getaway, Mark?
It's a time for bros to get together and talk business in the mountains.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so Ben and I started doing this business retreat every year, getting together and just connecting. Him and I are really great friends, and so we just loved being able to see each other, even though we'd live in different states. And so we would get together every year and talk about businesses and our struggles and all this other kind of stuff. And I don't remember how it really transpired. I remember we were on a walk, we went on a walk, up in the mountains, and you were talking about this thing that you do with your team at Knapsack, that you guys focus one day a week and whatever. And then it was just I was like, dude, this sounds like it would be a great thing. We should start a podcast, talking about this habit that you do on Fridays. And then it kind of just birthed out of that. And that was in 2019. And so we were like, all right, we're going to gear up so that, in January 2020, we're going to launch this podcast and help small business owners and freelancers and creatives and entrepreneurs, share some of our knowledge, interview interesting people that can help us spend more time working on our business instead of always in our business. And we started doing that. And unbeknownst to us, COVID hit. Yet we were remote. You were living in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I'm over here in Denver, Colorado. And so we really didn't skip a beat once the pandemic hit, because we were already virtual anyways and doing the podcast and kind of had a plan to execute on that. And so it's wild to think that we're here 5.5 years later, and the show's still rocking and rolling. And it just doesn't feel that long ago. It doesn't feel like we've been doing it this long.
No, and I mean, even knowing each other before that, back when you were a Knapsack client and we weren't even really friends yet, it goes even deeper.
Well, I know, and that's what's even crazier. I mean, so right now we've been friends, I can say, over a decade.
That's right.
We've been friends since 2014.
That's crazy. Yeah, man. Honestly, this has been so cool. It was always like my dream to have a podcast and to get to do it with somebody like you, where it's like not just doing a podcast, but becoming such good friends. It's been so awesome. And it's definitely, it's a hard thing to say goodbye to, at least doing it regularly, but, it is the right time, I think. And, anyway, I'm just grateful for all the stuff that I've learned from you and your patience with me trying to be on a podcast, especially in the beginning. I mean, even now, I'm not the best on a podcast, but you have taught me so much and helped me get better at it. I have this nice mic because you told me to buy it. I've got, you've kind of mentored me into podcasting, and I just it means a lot to me. And it's been really cool.
Well, who knows? Maybe you'll spin up another podcast, talking about Squarespace websites or, all sorts of niche-y things that you're kind of into and doing. So, yeah, man, I'm excited to kind of continue to follow your journey, and obviously we're going to be best friends forever. So
yeah, we're kind of intertwined business wise and friendship wise.
Exactly.
So
but the audience won't be able to hear that intro with Benjamin Manley.
Yeah. It's like, who is this person?
For the past several months, guests will get on me like, is your co-host joining us? And I'm like, the funny thing is...
Do you think you could do that just with you should have done that with a more famous person. If you're not going to really have the host on, you could just be like Mark Labriola and Kevin Costner.
Brad Pitt.
Oh yeah. Exactly. I don't know why. Yeah.
Kevin
just
Costner.
Say that. Oh yeah, he's not here today, but people are always like, hey, that's a great way to get guests on the show, man. Like if they see that name on there, they're going to just be like, heck yeah, I'll jump on the podcast. Oh man, he wasn't here today. Sorry about that.
You know what? Yeah, but, unfortunately.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. That's hilarious. All right, so we teased a lot throughout last year. We teased a lot of, okay, you're in the middle of selling your business, but we can't talk about anything, because there's all these non-disclosures or just the details weren't prevalent at the time. And so I think what would be cool is if we maybe talked a little bit about your journey, because I know a lot of people who own small agencies or own a business. There's this thought. We recently had Arthur on our show, and he helps people buy and sell businesses. And it was a great conversation. And we talked about, all the things that you have to do in order to kind of prepare, or the things to look for when you're buying a business. And that was a really great episode. It's not out yet. Well, it will be out. Well, it won't be out. I think we're holding that episode until after this episode. But anyways, we had a great conversation with Arthur. And I think a lot of people are always curious about, okay, I have this thing. I've been doing this thing. And, what's next, or what do I do with it, right? I think that's something that I've been thinking about and really kind of inspired by you is, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, Brand Viva, and I think about it's been a great lifestyle business over the past decade. It's provided for me and my family, and then it's allowed me to, do things I never could have dreamed of doing or having, and then it's allowed me to provide for employees. I have some great employees that are just amazing people, and I get to provide for them and their families, and so it's been wonderful. But then, after a decade, you start to think all right, well, what's next, or what. Where does this go? Does it you just kind of wake up every day and do the thing until it fizzles out and dissolves? Or do you have a plan, for it? And so, so I think it would be really great if we could kind of discuss your journey. I mean, because you did the thing that people think about doing, and you sold your business, and then you traveled the world with your family, and that's a dream for a lot of people. And then I think one of the other key things is you were able to build your business in a way where you could leave it, so even before you sold it, you were kind of in this season of it's kind of running without me, and so that's kind of cool. And so I kind of want to cover all those things and kind of get into some of the details about that. And so maybe you can take us back to the very beginning of kind of when this all started. I remember you read Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. And I remember we kind of started having those conversations, about like, oh, like maybe I can build my business to kind of run, and then I can just go to Hawaii, for 4-6 weeks or whatever, and the business can kind of do its thing. And so I remember that conversation, gosh, I want to say we had in maybe 2018 or 2019, something like that. We were kind of having those conversations about that, and so kind of lead us into that, like kind of take us through, because I know initially you got a spam email essentially from somebody that was like, hey, have you thought about selling your business?
I was like, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah. And so all you spammers out there, just keep grinding, because there is some guy out there that's going to eventually bite.
Yeah, totally. Oh man. First of all, since I haven't been on in a while, in case people don't even know what my business is, Knapsack is the business
We've
that
got
I
all
sold.
these new listeners who are like, who's Ben?
I'm like, who is this guy? So Knapsack is a business that I built, started it in 2012, and it's a Squarespace web design agency. One of our specialties is building websites in a day on Squarespace. And we were kind of known for that process, as well as for high quality design and great customer experience. So that's something I built from 2012 up until when I sold it. So, but yeah, like exactly what you're saying, Mark. It's so funny you say the 10 year mark, because that's when I started thinking about selling a little bit. Like, okay, it's been 10 years since I started this. Yeah, I don't know. It's something with humans and round numbers, it's like the marathon principle, where people start running marathons at age 29, 39. And those are like the common years, because you're like, oh, I'm almost 40. I need to run a marathon. Thankfully that hasn't hit me. I don't know. I'm
you don't want to run a marathon. I do not feel soon.
I don't need to do that. But all that to say, I think that, there was something about that number that I was like, man, I've been doing this a long time. It just kind of hit me, and I kind of started getting an itch to do something else, And just like you said, it started sooner than that with the systemization of my business. Like I always wanted to have more freedom when I even owned my business. So I wanted to systemize it. But then eventually, once that was systemized to a point where I could have freedom, then I was like, okay, what's the next thing? And there's more reasons than just that. Of course, there's always many reasons to sell a business, but one of them was just, hey, I think I've taken this as far as I'm interested in taking it, even though I love the business. It's kind of like, I think of it a lot of like as like parenting, like with your
I've
kids.
loved these children as much as I can love them, and I'm done with them.
I've like, yeah, exactly. No. It's like you don't really want to keep your kids at home forever, no matter how much you love them. You want them to be successful on their own. This is the way I think about it. It's not like this with every business, but with my business, I kind of thought about it like that, where, hey, I've taught this business and done the best I can with my skill set to get this to a good place. And I'm kind of interested in pursuing other things, And so I think the best thing to do, instead of letting it kind of fizzle on its own, I think having someone else kind of take it to the next level would be better than just kind of letting it run on its own. So it ran on its own for a while, like you mentioned, and it was great, but I really felt like, okay, selling it, I think, is kind of the way to take it to the next level. As well as, I also just really wanted that experience from a business owner perspective. I was like, because it was systemized, I knew like, okay, this is actually a business that could be sold. So I really wanted that experience of figuring out how that works. I figured if I did that now, if I ever built another business, then I would have more experience and be able to get better at that too,
Yeah. So let's go back to the systematizing of your business, because I feel like this is the key to building a sellable business. To date, Brand Viva is a relational business. It's built off of word of mouth and networking and things like that, all on me. Like I'm, going and meeting people, and I'm building relationships, and I'm staying in touch with, old contacts. And it's just something that I'm kind of in charge of. And that's my role in this business, is business development and, leadership of the team and stuff like that. And so it's like one of those things, right? Like you don't just wake up and say, all right, I'm going to just sell the business. Let me put it out on the market. Right. And we kind of talked with Arthur about this, in that coming episode, but what was it for you? Like, one is, I feel like your brain is just like a systems thinking brain. Like you can't help but look into something and see like, okay, how can I systematize this? Or how can I make a process in order to make this like streamlined? And so I guess that's some advice that you can maybe give us or share, is just saying, like, how important is it to, and where do we start when it comes to systemizing the business? Yeah. And do you think that systematizing, do you think you can systematize any business?
Man, so many good questions. I think first I just want to say that if I can do it, anybody can do it, to be honest. Like this, one of my friends, when somebody, one of my good friends, Adam, I had bought a house when I was, I don't know, maybe 22, 23, something like that. And he had always thought buying a house was really hard, but then he saw that I did it. He's like, man, if Ben can do it, then I could totally do it.
If Ben can sell a home. Like, geez, anyone can.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, like, I didn't graduate college. I didn't go to business school. I'm basically a graphic designer, just figuring it out as I go.
You
right. So I feel, hey, that's an advantage. You shut your mouth. I'm just kidding.
That's true.
No, actually, no, our kids have been to almost every type of school at this point, and there's really honestly great things about everything there. But with selling the business, if anybody can do it, or if I can do it, anybody can do it, honestly. And I did not have experience doing this. This is my first time. And the other good thing I would say before I jump in the process stuff is that the cool thing is almost any business is actually sellable. Even if you don't have amazing processes, I think it definitely increases the value of it. Mm-hmm. And, everybody is going to exit their business at some point, whether it's, dying, whether it's just giving up, whether it's selling it, you're going to exit it at some point. So it's good to be thinking about that ahead of time and planning for it, because you could exit it with nothing, or you could exit it with something great for your family, maybe a payout of some kind, or handing it down to someone else and leaving a legacy. Mm-hmm. So everyone's going to exit. So it's good to think about that. And anyone can do this, I believe. If you can build a business, I think you can sell it too. I think processes for me was one of my superpowers for sure. And that's one of the things that made my business valuable. I think if I were to say things that made my business most valuable, it was the processes we built. It was the good reputation we built with our customers, mm-hmm. and reviews online. And then it was like our really steady flow of clients coming in. So
right. And to note, I would say a steady flow of clients with, like, you didn't really do any digital advertising or spend mm-hmm. a ton of money to get leads, right. Like really you built the business off of, just doing great work. And how are most people finding you back in the day? Like, was it SEO or what was it?
Yeah. Originally it was word of mouth. Yeah. And then we got listed way back in the day. Like Squarespace started this experts page, and there was only 3 mm-hmm. people listed on it.
And that's how I found you. Yeah, that's how I originally found you, was through the Squarespace page, because I was like, I'm not going to move from Squarespace, because I built the site for the company I was working with, and I was like, I'm not going to move it from Squarespace, but I want to like take this Squarespace site to the next level. And I went onto their site to find an approved vendor, and that's how I found you.
Yeah, so that one, basically it was originally that, and then over time that became more saturated, so we tried to transition. Basically, we had a lot of leads coming from Squarespace, and then I knew that wasn't going to last forever because there's more competition. So we basically tried to create a great customer experience for all of those people that we served from all around the country, because they were, all over the place. Mm-hmm. And then we basically transitioned to more referral based stuff from those customers, as we started losing leads from that, as there was way more competition. So we started doing more referrals, and then we increased our SEO strategy. So we basically just created some really useful pages on our site, especially like inspiration pages around certain types of web design, so that people could search and be like, I want an example of a consultant website.
It's so funny right now, over the past few years, like whenever I try to get some sites to look like best sites, like you guys show up, or Knapsack has showed up on a lot of those lists of just mm-hmm. like the best designed websites,
Yeah, and I mean, we're very fortunate for that. I think it's partially because we do good work, and also because we took the time to show up on some of those searches too. So I think SEO was good. And then I just think the lesson I've learned there is just always kind of trying to grow new avenues of getting leads, because you can't keep relying on the same one forever. So for us, that was something we kept kind of evolving. Eventually we joined the StoryBrand community and created some products around StoryBrand specifically. So that opened up a whole new avenue of leads there. Started developing more partnerships with people like yourself, where you have a marketing agency essentially that does podcasting and video production, things like that. And, if you don't do websites, it's great to partner with somebody that does do websites. So we partner with people like yourself to do referrals back and forth. And that also was a huge, way of getting leads for us too. So anyway, there's the lead piece, the process piece, and just like great reputation building, of course. But as far as your question around processes, I think good processes are like evolved over time. You don't really come up with a good process on the first try. A couple of things I would note is like one thing is you already have processes in your business, whether you've written them down or not. You have a process. It may change every project, or it may be, some things will stay the same, but you already have one. So you probably just don't think about it too much, So,
right. Well, and I think that's the biggest thing. Right? We talked about these SOPs and again, if it's one person, like if it's me doing all the things, and sometimes because you get stuck into that role, you don't think about it as a process, or you don't think about it as something worth documenting or writing down. But again, right, it's like if you don't do that thing, like who's going to do it? And if you're not available to do it, like how is someone going to know how to do it? And then again, especially as a leader and when you build a company from being a solopreneur and then hiring people and growing a business, a lot of times you want things done the way that you want them done, and so you need to be able to transfer that knowledge of how you do things so that someone can then repeat the process on how you did those things, so that the business grew in a certain way or grew because of your skill sets and knowledge. So you want people to take your skill sets and knowledge and continue and take the torch and continue to do it your way so that it continues to grow in the way that you've grown it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, to do that, I feel like you need, a lot of people will create, I think the binder is a little outdated, but a Google Doc is a better example. People will create like a Google Doc with, here's how to do this process. But people probably won't ever reference it or update it unless it's integrated in your actual process. So what I like to do, instead of creating like documentation about this stuff, I like to just create checklists, because checklists are practical and you can use them on every project. So if you have a checklist that can be duplicated, so let's say you're doing a video project. I mean, I'm sure you guys already do this, but having like, it can be a Google Doc or whatever. Maybe you're using Asana, but you should have a standard checklist that you do on every project, and then just be able to duplicate that when you get a new client. Like, cool, we're doing this type of project, so here's our checklist. And then at the top of that checklist, you should have a little Loom video that walks someone new through completing that checklist and gives them nuances and tips, because just looking at that checklist isn't going to help you learn it, but you need somebody, like just a little Loom video or something that walks you through how to do that checklist, and some maybe judgment calls you might need to make that are a little more nuanced on that. And then, training somebody on that is going to be so much easier. You get a new person in your company, say, hey, you're going to be responsible for this project. Here's a checklist of things you need to do. Here's a Loom video that's going to walk you through how to do this. If you have questions, you can always come to me, of course, but this is going to get you started. So I think the Loom video combined with that is so much better, personally, because you can get nuance in there, and it's so much easier than creating giant documents of just stuff you're not going to read later.
It's like,
because then you're actually, the documentation is in the same place as when you're doing the project. That's the key thing, because then you can also update those checklists. So let's say somebody's doing that checklist and they're like, hey, this doesn't make sense for this project. Cool. They can, drop that in Slack or somewhere and say like, okay, we need to update this checklist. And then that way it's getting updated and noticed when it's out of date, instead of just being somewhere that's not seen.
Yeah.
So,
so this kind of goes into, again, right, building a business that someone would actually want to buy, because there's that element of when someone's looking at all these, say creative agencies to buy a market, like a website development company, right? It's like, okay, what what business that I'm looking at these three, which one is the most turnkey? Which one am I going to put my money in, and then it's going to still be able to kind of run by itself? I don't have to get in there and like create all these systems and processes and spend, because it is very tedious work, and it's very time consuming work, right? And I think, again, that's kind of what this podcast has been about, is this idea of like, how do we spend more time working on our businesses instead of in our businesses? Because it's easy to get sucked into the emails and the day to day and jumping in on projects and completing these. And then you never have time to sit and actually think like, okay, I need to make this process, or I need to do this thing, and how do I, do it? Yeah. And so I guess I'd love to start at the very beginning of you are just the guy doing the thing that dudes do, and you're here and you're making websites by yourself. And then I think, was it Joy that kind of joined you early on and was kind of helping with more admin stuff, client communication and stuff like that?
She did. I had other team members previous to that, but she was my first like administrative hire after I had hired a developer and content writer before that, and some part-time people. But she was my first administrative hire.
Right. And obviously that's one of those things, right, where you can start the funnel where the client comes in, you can offload some of that burden of the administrative work and focus, so that you can just focus on the creative and doing the actual work. Yeah. And so what were those first processes that you kind of thought about to kind of create or develop?
First processes, I think probably my first ones were just around executing
like the
onboarding,
work. Like the onboarding experience, or
I think it was just like executing the work probably. Just almost like a reminder of like, shoot, I need to make sure I don't forget to do these things on every project, like, maybe more things like I need to make sure I set a SEO description on each page, or just little small things where it's like, okay, it'd be easy to overlook that as a designer if I didn't have a checklist, or I need to make sure I need to double check after a project that the SSL certificate actually worked, so that, somebody's like, anyway, probably most of it is probably like catching mistakes of things I would overlook naturally, so it's just kind of almost like reminders,
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you and I are a little bit similar in this way, where we know our weaknesses, right? It's like, okay, I know I'm lazy in these areas. I'll push something off. And so I need somebody to get into this spot, or I need to make a checklist, or I need to make a process in order for me to make sure that I do those things. Because if I don't have it to where I have to check it off, I'm going to, I don't really want to do that part of the process, or like, do we really need to do it? And so it's like, I think having those, concrete things where it's okay, these are the things that we have to check off before we can, say it's complete or move on.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're kind of going along, you start hiring people, you start building out these processes, and that kind of brings us to the moment you get this email and it's like, hey, have you thought about selling your business? When you get that email, you're thinking like, yeah, I've kind of been thinking about this. And so you kind of start that process. I guess one of the things that I would ask or be curious about is, did you think like, oh, my business is in pretty good shape, I got all these systems and processes, like I should go to like hit the easy button and this thing will sell? And like, what were the things that you found out that was like, oh my gosh, like I thought I had all this pretty organized and pretty put together, but really when it got to the nitty gritty, like next time I need to make sure to do X, Y, and Z.
This is like my favorite question, because I learned so much. I have a huge list of things here actually that I'm like, I would love to just touch on briefly, because I think they're little things. Some are big, some are little, that I'm guessing other people have overlooked, as well. But I definitely am like, have a list of things like, hey, next time I sell a business, let's do this a little different. So I guess I'm building my process for selling my businesses. It's probably only going to happen a few times, but I'm like, I need to remember this stuff. So, one thing I'd say just overall about is, building a sellable business, and some of the stuff that I learned along the way was that, your business can be valued much higher if you're not operating yourself. Kind of like what you touched on earlier. If you're doing all the work yourself or managing everything yourself, you can you probably won't get as much of a high valuation on your business. So if you can have someone else operating it or a team operating it instead of you, and you're only putting in a couple hours a week or something like that, or just less time than needed, that makes it much more, opens up new types of buyers, not just owner operators, but other types of maybe investors and stuff like that. So you have a wider audience of people that might want to buy it, as well as making it more valuable. So that's one thing that I was fortunate to already be in that position. So that one worked out really well in my favor. Now, on the other side of things, going back to the, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Pro tip, you should have contracts with your customers. I don't know if you ever heard of that in business, but apparently contracts are a good thing to have, right?
Now, why is that? Well, no, listen, yeah. I totally agree. But in the same way, it's something I don't do over half the time. Like in the sense of most people that we're making deals with, I kind of know pretty well, and I feel confident. Like, they're good. They're going to pay their invoice. Like, I don't have to worry about it. You know. Right. Now there have been a few times over the years, and Janie always busts me for this. She's like, "Well, did we have a contract with them about that?" And I'm like, "Well, not really." You know. And so it's like that one or two times a year where you're like, "Man, I wish I had a contract to point to and said, hey, we agreed this and this didn't happen," and like, you know, whatever.
So, yeah, exactly. And so to me, the way I always thought about it incorrectly is that, hey, you know what? If a contract's purpose is just to me to point to you and be like, hey, you didn't do your part, I'm going to like play hardball and you need to pay me even though you don't like what you got. Right. And that's not my personality. If I'm working with somebody, I'm going to pretty much be like, hey, if you don't like what you got, I'm going to give you a refund and you can go your way and we'll go my way and we'll,
I'm very similar where it's just like, you know, hey,
exactly.
Like, or like, how do I get to yes? How do I fix this? How do we make it right? I'm willing to go to the ends of the earth to just make it work and make you happy, you know?
And you're, you know, you are good with relationships too, you know, so you're going to be able to talk with them, find out what's wrong, fix it, you know, and be understanding about that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, you know, okay, well, that's just mostly to protect myself in that situation. I'm never going to sue somebody, so I don't need to worry about that. Now, we do have some level of agreement. It was not nothing, but it was not actually physically signed, you know, contract. It was more like, hey, here's the terms. When you pay this invoice, you agree to these
terms.
Yeah, but that was never reviewed by a lawyer or anything, right? So that's
it was not before AI.
Yeah, well, there you go. So some of the problems with that I never really considered are, if you sell your business to someone else, they are now legally responsible for those things. And so they are not protected in a situation. So it's a big risk for them. I mean, how do they know that I didn't promise a customer something years ago and didn't have a contract on what was actually agreed? You know, they could come back and sue the company later on, and then they're responsible for all those problems. And so it's a big risk for somebody if they don't know what the terms of the agreements and contracts were. So, you know, thankfully we had things that were very clear, like packages that we sold that were like, hey, this is what you're getting. So even though it wasn't a legally reviewed thing, they were fine with that, you know, and so that ended up being fine. But I think that would be a big risk for some buyers to be like, hey, you know, I understand why they'd want signed contracts with everyone. Even like small things like subscriptions, like our $99 a month subscription, they wanted to know what the agreement was for that. And I mean, all that makes sense, you know? So yeah. That was one thing, was just the contracts. Another thing was, and this one we were fortunate on as well, is that you don't want to have your largest customer make up more than maybe 10% of your total income, if possible. Like if you're selling, because it's just a bigger risk for the buyer. So if you have a customer that's making up maybe 20% of your revenue or more, if you lose that customer, that's a big risk for that new buyer. And, you know, they're not sure, you know, hey, is this person going to stick around long term? So for us, our biggest customer was only about 2 or 3% of our income. And that was like by far our biggest customer. So that was fortunate in that we have lots of smaller projects that we're doing with our productized service. So that one we are fortunate on, but that's something to think about, is like, how can you distribute the income you're getting to be more stable from multiple customers? Another one is, this one I'd say I would give us a 50 out of 100 on. This is not, we didn't do great on this one, but we didn't do terrible. And that's like having a niche for your business. So we didn't have a specific niche, like industry we built websites for. We had a few that were popular, but we did specialize in one platform, which is Squarespace. Right. So we were known for that. So that helps us in some ways. But the reason that a niche is attractive, or can open you up to more buyers, is just imagine like, okay, let's say there's let's say it's like a medical software company, you know, maybe they make a CRM for medical companies. And let's say I had a web design company that serves only medical companies. Well, then for them, that is a hugely valuable client list for them to buy my company that has all these clients, because they can sell their CRM to all of those clients, right? So you can be attractive to really specific buyers or investors if you have a niche, rather than just having, it's just a bunch of random types of businesses.
That's convicting. I mean, and again, it's like we know these things, the terms, there's riches in the niches. But I think the hard part is that when we get into business, right, it's almost like, all right, well, I'll take anyone who's going to give me a buck, you know, and I don't care what industry you're in or like where you know, but then as we grow, I think it's hard to like say that, okay, nope, we're not going to serve these types of companies, or we're not going to do business. We're just going to focus on this niche. But kind of what I hear you saying, and it totally makes sense to me, is that, again, like if it's an investor or some sort of firm or whatever that's going to invest in a business, right? It's that client list that they're really interested in. And again, it's like, okay, if we want to add, say, podcasting to our agency, say they're like an SEO digital advertising agency, they're big, maybe like they're $20 million a year agency, and they want to start offering podcast services to a company. If I'm only serving healthcare podcasts and creating healthcare podcasts, then it's more likely to say, okay, you're already doing the thing that we niche and specialize in at this $20 million thing. Yeah. Then we can go ahead and buy your company for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million and bolt it on to what we're doing. And you already have the systems and processes of doing the photos and setting up the RSS feed and doing all that stuff. And so we're buying that. And so that makes total sense to me. It's kind of like, oh, wow. But it's scary at the same time, like for me to say like, okay, we're going to change our website and we're just going to focus on, healthcare and, whatever. Yeah. And, over time, like I kind of think that, and I'm still doing this myself, so I don't have it all figured out. But my conclusion about should you niche or not is like, you should do both, especially when you're first starting out. I mean, if you can, there's a lot of work to do, but to me, like I've picked a couple of niches with my new company, Site Club, and I am intentionally going after them. I'm going to be going to a conference like soon that's like in that niche. And I'm like, you can have your main website be general still, but you can create a landing page that's just for that niche, and you can start reaching out to those people. If you want to go all in with it, if that starts taking off, then create a separate brand that niches to that. It's kind of like what we did with Knapsack being our main brand, and then StorySite being our website company for Story brand. It is more work and overhead to have 2 domains, 2 websites, 2 brands. It is. But I think it's for someone who's more cautious and just does not feel comfortable, or maybe doesn't have the savings to cut off some of those other opportunities. I think you can still start doing that. It's kind of like having a side hustle. Just create a side hustle for that niche, and then once it starts growing, you can kind of step off of what you're doing onto the other one. I mean, that's the way I am, because I'm kind of cautious. So that could work for some people too. Okay. So you didn't niche, and that was kind of, thankfully, because you kind of niched within Squarespace and you did this very specific
process thing. Yeah, we kind of got known for that.
Yeah.
So we were lucky there, but I feel like we could have done better on that one.
Yeah. And then what else?
One that we also did partially good on would be recurring revenue. So like, your business, a business like mine basically can maybe sell for about 3x multiple of, and so 3x multiple, some people do EBITDA, and some people do SED, which is sellers, SDE. Some people do SDE, which is sellers discretionary earnings. And that's basically how much money are you making as the business owner after all expenses are paid, like stuff that's maybe like, what do you get in your paycheck? What profit did you make at the end of the year? What are you getting into your retirement? And add all that stuff up. Like all the stuff that you as a business owner are basically getting value out of the company. How much is that? And then a multiple of that. So let's say you were bringing in, $200,000 a year in SDE for you as the owner of the company. Then if you do a 3x multiple, you're looking at selling your business for $600,000, right? So, if that's one-time project income, then maybe 3 times multiple is realistic. So $600,000. If most of your business is recurring revenue, like subscription revenue, then you can bump that multiple up. So you could probably get like a 5x multiple potentially. Usually, I mean, not always 5, but like definitely higher, right? So you could do 4, 4.5, 5. So basically that same seller's discretionary income that you're getting, the money you're making from the business as an owner, could be up to $1 million instead of at like 600,000 with the same business if it's recurring subscription versus one-time projects. Because if somebody buys the business, it's almost guaranteed income they're going to get as long as the contracts are good and as long as there's a history of people staying, longer and there's not a big risk of them dropping off. Then it's like, oh, cool. We already have consistent stuff coming in. We don't have to panic and do sales to keep up this revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense too.
That was a good one. Yeah. When we did some of that, we had a little bit of like, maybe 10 to 20% of our income was recurring. Okay.
So that's not bad.
Yeah.
No, it's something.
Yeah. It's something. Exactly.
Yeah.
We already covered this, but I definitely would say having systems and processes in place is great. And that even that way, when you sell, even if there's some team members that don't stay or things like that, you still have processes in place that new people can be trained on so that they're not having to be like building the business from scratch, they can keep operating. I'd also say this one I would give myself a very low grade on, which is keeping your finances in order in a standard way. So like, I'm not like, it's not that I, didn't have an orderly system. It just wasn't the industry standard for how to handle it. So for example, like, I very rarely looked at profit and loss statements. That was just not the way I ran my business. Like I ran it on profit first. You can do both. You can run profit first and look at your profit and loss statements, and you should. It's just, that's not how I did it. I had my own way that I created, this little like business simulator, and it all made sense in my brain and it worked, but it was not the standard way. So then when it was time to sell my business, I didn't have already all the P&Ls going back however many years to show them. So then I had to manually go back and generate a lot of those from my bookkeeping software. And it was just like something I had to learn in the middle of it, and it made it more stressful. And if I had just kind of done that in a more standard way, it would have just been a lot easier and been less of a panic kind of at the end, if that makes sense.
Because you felt like at that point it was like, oh crap, I need to get all these.
Yeah.
I guess,
generate all these reports and like figure out. And then I'm thinking like, man, I wonder if my business even looks healthy from this perspective, because I never look at it from this perspective. It did, which is great. But I'm also like, I was also having to learn new terminology, because I'm like, I'm not an accountant and, or bookkeeper by any means. And I'm like, okay, I think I know what you're asking me, but I was doing a lot of Googling of terms, when it came to financial stuff, because I hadn't educated myself on that side of things ahead of time as much. It worked out fine. It just would have been less stressful.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then other things would be like just little stuff is like keeping track of, like, I did not expect this one, but keeping track of all of your like software licenses, stock photo licenses, like,
this is that granular.
Yeah. It's like, you can always pull those together later, which I did, but it was a little bit annoying. So it's like, I had to create a giant spreadsheet of all of these different software platforms, basically our tech stack, and then link to all of the, licenses there, and then indicate whether they were transferable licenses or not transferable licenses. So basically, hey, can this software be just transferred to the new owner, or do they need to create a brand new account in this software? So a lot of software is not transferable, which I never really consider when I'm picking software. I wouldn't really change what I did, honestly, but it's just interesting to know that depending on who you're selling to and how it works, they may want to just transfer the accounts, but a lot of software does not allow you to just hand over the username and password of that to someone else legally. And so they may have to create a new account, export all the data from your account, import it in there. So it's an administrative headache, that comes into play that I just didn't think about ahead of time.
So then how do you think you can like overcome that next time? As some of it, just the headaches that are the headaches of, they have to create a new account and do this.
Yeah, I think one thing I would have done differently is have somebody that's administrative help me do this stuff. The problem is, I mean, I did all of it myself. It would have been nice to even just hire somebody I know to help me do that. But you don't, the thing is, when you're selling a business, you know, the standard practice is you don't really tell everyone in your business that you're selling it, because you don't want to lose team members or have them start searching for other jobs beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to hand it off to the new owners with everything clean, everything working. So, I, you know, could have asked people in my company to start pulling this stuff together. But
I think, why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
I just
and I'm
wanna,
like,
you know, focus on getting organized.
yeah. So, you know, from that perspective, it's like, I do wish I had had help on that. So either someone outside the company or potentially, you know, getting permission from the buyers to talk to somebody within the company to help get that stuff together. It would have just been a lot easier for me. It's just not my strength is that stuff. Some people that run a business are great at all that stuff. So for them, it'd be no problem. But for me, it would have been nice to have some help with some of that stuff.
No, that's all very valuable stuff. Anything else on that aspect of the business? Like, you know, things that you looking back that it's like, okay.
That's really all like the lessons I learned, like as far as more like building a sellable business. But then I have a whole other list of things that are more about the sales process itself and lessons learned from that.
Yeah. All right. Well, on the next episode, we're going to talk about structuring the deal and life after selling. So you want to tune in to episode 201. Well, hey, thanks so much for being with us. And thank you for listening to The Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, you can find show notes for this episode. You can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our Friday Habit system. That's going to show you how to set aside one full day each week to dedicate working on your business instead of always in your business. You can reach us at hello@thefridayhabit.com if you got any questions or a guest suggestion. And remember, until next time, live every day like it's Friday.